Ladies and gentlemen, we are live. Welcome to the Mongoose's fifth show. We're going to discuss a lot that's going on in the world of football this week. First and foremost, we're going to discuss Peyton Manning and the resulting Tim Tebow trade. Now, Peyton Manning, as we all know, has signed with the Denver Broncos to be their starter, $95 million over 5 years, making him the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, and deservedly so. Did he make the right decision? I really don't think so. I think he should have went to the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers had a more championship-ready team. They went to the NFC Championship game last year, almost making it to the Super Bowl. They have a great special teams, one of the best punters in the league, one of the best kickers in the league in David Akers. Their special teams is very solid. Kenny Williams notwithstanding his son, Kyle Williams, fumbling the punts, notwithstanding all of that, they do have a good return game in the special teams. Their defense is very solid. I think all they needed was Peyton Manning to get to the Super Bowl. So I think Peyton made a really bad choice going to sign with the Denver Broncos because he could have won the Super Bowl with the 49ers. That being said, let's evaluate the fallout of his decision to go to the Denver Broncos, whereas I said he does not have as good a chance to win a Super Bowl. And because Peyton Manning signed with the Denver Broncos, it made Tim Tebow expendable. And John Elway really did want that. John Elway was never a big Tim Tebow fan. He always wanted to get rid of him. This gave him a perfect reason to do so. So as a result of Peyton Manning signing with the Denver Broncos, they were able to trade Tim Tebow to the New York Jets. The New York Jets received a 7th-round pick and Tim Tebow in return for giving the Broncos a 4th-round pick and a 6th-round pick in the 2012 NFL Draft. So what I'm going to evaluate this week is I'm going to evaluate whether that was first and foremost a fair deal for the Jets and the Broncos. Secondly, I'm going to evaluate whether Tim Tebow could be a good football move for the New York Jets. And lastly, I'm going to evaluate the fallout for Mr. Mark Sanchez, whether this will affect his career. So let's get to the Tebow trade first. To me, you're getting a very good football player for a 4th and a 6th-round pick. In addition, you're getting a return of a 7th-round pick and Tim Tebow, who can do a lot of things for your team. So from that standpoint, the Jets made a really good move. They did not give up a lot to get a very good football player. I think that at the end of the day, they split the $5 million cost that the Broncos escalated in the bonuses to pay Tim Tebow. So they did not give up a lot monetarily. I think Tim Tebow has a good cap number in terms of only being counted against the cap, $1.2 million coming this year. So to me, the Jets really made a good football move in that they did not give up a lot to get a very good football player. Now you're going to tell me, how is he going to help the Jets? And that's the second part of the evaluation process now that we've established that that was a good deal in terms of assets that the Jets gave up. Now let's get to how he can help the Jets. 2 years ago and the year before this year, when the Jets were at their best, making it to 2 AFC Championship games, they had a guy named Brad Smith who ran the Wildcat formation for them and allowed them to basically get some trick plays, some good running plays. I think Brad Smith at one point was averaging 9 yards a carry through the Wildcat. So to me, Tim Tebow fills that void that was missing last year when they tried to go to a more pass-happy offense, which didn't work with Mark Sanchez. So to me, as long as you're getting Tim Tebow, making it very clear that Mark Sanchez is a starter, which I believe the Jets did, this is a very good football move from that standpoint. To me, the Wildcat or the read option formation, whatever they choose to run, will only get better with Tim Tebow because, as we all know, they have signed Tony Sparano to be a coordinator for the Jets, and Tony Sparano, as we all know, ran the Wildcat for all those years in Miami and really brought it back into the league. So if anything, this guy knows how to utilize a guy like Tim Tebow and will use him effectively. So to me, they're getting back what they lost in Brad Smith. Mark Sanchez proved last year that he's not really ready to run an offense which relies on him carrying the team with just a passing attack. So this allows Tebow to come in on certain plays, like a 3rd and 2, when they need a first down, or goal line situations, and allows them to basically get first downs through some trick plays and through some plays where the defense may not be ready for in a given situation. Now you're going to say, hey, what about the rest of the NFL? They've basically adapted to the Wildcat. Now it's no longer going to be effective. How are the Jets going to counteract that? Well, last year, the Wildcat was not effective for most teams, but as we saw with Denver, although they did not run the main Wildcat formation, they ran more of a read option offense, which the Jets can also do. It doesn't really make much of a difference what you want to call it, but ultimately back there, it was successful for the Broncos, unlike other NFL teams, and the reason being is that, as we saw, the one kind of pass Tim Tebow can throw is a downfield pass. So if Tim Tebow comes to the New York Jets and is put into these kind of packages, I believe that they will be successful running those kind of packages because there's always a threat that Tim will throw the ball downfield and that it will be successful. This is a different element that Tony Sparano will get that he did not have with the Dolphins when he was running the Wildcat with Ronnie Brown or Ricky Williams and all these other teams trying to do the Wildcat or read option, whatever they're trying to do, did not have a talented player like Tim Tebow to do so. So I think it is a very good football move. I think you can spell Mark Sanchez 8 to 10 plays a game when Tim Tebow's playing well, and you can put in the Wildcat there. And when it's not going well and you don't need it, you don't have to use it. You could basically make him a backup and basically say, hey, this is your role, and you're going to play this role. Tim Tebow is the perfect organizational player. He's not going to ruffle any feathers, and he's not going to say he should be the starter. He's going to fill his role. Now you're going to say, hey, what if this guy plays well and he is effective through his 8 plays, and he's going to want to basically start a chatter and say, hey, I should be replacing Mark Sanchez. That is not going to happen. This is a guy in Tim Tebow who has an option to bang the most beautiful girls in the world, and he refuses to do so because of his religious beliefs. This is a guy who believes in something higher than himself. He's not going to undermine the New York Jets franchise and try to basically sandbag Mark Sanchez and say he should be the starter because he's the ultimate team player. That shows by his resistance to beautiful women, as I said. Now, Tim Tebow has a lot going for him in that, hey, he can run a lot of these plays. He can add a different element to the Jets offense. And I believe from a football standpoint that it is going to be successful. Now, the fallout from this is that Mark Sanchez, will he lose his confidence? Will something of that nature happen? To me, if Mark Sanchez cannot hold off a 46% passer in Tim Tebow, he's not going to lead the Jets anywhere anyway. So ultimately, if that's what you find out this year, it's fine because you have to go in a different direction. Ultimately, that's what you have to know, that, hey, Tim Tebow, if Mark Sanchez is not strong enough to hold him off, he's not strong enough to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Excuse me. So that's a story with Mark Sanchez. And anybody who is not happy with this Tim Tebow trade and saying, hey, they're going to undermine Sanchez's confidence, this, that, and the other, you're a dope. Because you're the same guy throughout the season that said Mark Sanchez needed someone to push him. Mark Brunell, who was the backup before Tim Tebow, was not good enough to push him. So when the Jets go out and sign Drew Stanton, give him a $500,000 bonus, and now get Tim Tebow for, to me, what is like minimal risk and the ultimate gain to your franchise, now you're going to criticize that move. So which is it? Do you need to push Mark Sanchez or do you not need to push Mark Sanchez? To me, after the year Mark Sanchez had last year, leading the Jets to an 8-8 season, having one of the worst QBR ratings in the NFL, you needed to get a guy like Tim Tebow in. You needed to get a guy to push him. And if Sanchez, and even if he doesn't take over the starting role, which is not what you want Sanchez to remain the starter. What he will do, like I said, is fill that Brad Smith role, and continue to be a threat, which the New York Jets can use in terms of the opponents will have the game plan for him, and he will add a rushing attack. Not only will he fill the Brad Smith role, but again, you do not have a backup running back to Sean Green. So ultimately, he can fill that role too. Now you're going to say, hey, don't you want to protect a guy like Tim Tebow? And aren't you worried about making him a future? No, you're not worried about making him the future of the franchise. Again, you got Tim Tebow for a 4th and 6th round pick. This is not what the Denver Broncos did in the draft and giving up when the Denver Broncos gave up 3 first-round picks to get Tim Tebow. So you don't have that ultimate investment in Tebow. You don't have to bring him along. You don't have to worry about him learning the game of football, learning how to pass. All you need to do is worry about how he can help your football team and what he can do this year. If he gets beat up, if he gets his bell rung, it does not matter. You can line him up at running back. You can line him up at the Wildcat. You can line him up at receiver or tight end or whatever you want to do with him because ultimately you're worried about winning now. You're not worried about the future. You have nothing tied into that guy. You have nothing. And everybody who thinks that ultimately it's going to be undue pressure on Sanchez, the Tebow backers are going to come out and say, hey, this guy should start. Again, this is not going to happen. Jets fans do not want him to start. It's not like with the Broncos where he was expected to be the savior of your franchise. Ultimately, he's going to be on the Jets as a bit player. Nobody is going to ask him to save anything. Nobody is going to be clamoring for him to start. So we're about out of time. That's my take on the Tebow situation and the Peyton Manning situation. I hope you enjoyed the 5th show of the Mongoose. And remember, I'm not backing down.